I was stalked, and then I worked in healthcare and all these things, and I was trying to figure out what was going on behind it. And then I researched it. And, you know, a lot of times in school they don't give you books that are applicable to your life and explain why, you know, you're dealing with a specific situation. And so I studied it myself because I wanted to actually learn.
How old were you when you actually started?
Are we filming?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. A few minutes ago.
Oh, I didn't know.
How old were you when you actually started New York?
Well, that would be, I was in my early 30s when I started New York Guys.
And originally, you know, when you did start this, you started this foundation, how many people did you originally have involved in it besides you? Like sort of the first...
In the beginning of New York Guys, it was just a handful of people, and then it really grew. It took off, sort of in an against all odds fashion, because we had so many people opposed to us. And to me, that's what the U.S. is about. It's about a few people making strides of improvement against all odds. And in New York City, which is kind of the belly of the beast of the illegal alien stampede. And that's what it is. It's a stampede for amnesty.
And so the dreamers, their dream is to get this amnesty. What is your dream?
Oh, my dream is to have our current existing immigration laws enforced and to have our border effectively secured. That's my dream.
And so I know I've already asked you this question a few times, but can you tell me about this illegal immigrant when you worked in the restaurant industry? He sort of stalked you and pulled out a gun. Again, just start from the top of it.
When I worked in the restaurant industry, a guy who told me he was illegally here, and mind you, there are a lot of illegals working in the New York City restaurant industry, unfortunately. And a man who told me that he was illegally here was stalking me because I had refused his advances. And then he also showed me that he was carrying an illegal firearm in his back. And I went down to INS, that 26 Federal Plaza, and then it was called INS, trying to get him deported. Because I think maybe it was the height of my naivete to think that I, as an American citizen, would be entitled to that protection from INS, from somebody who was violent and intended to do me harm and was stalking me and worked with me. And so maybe I was naive to think that INS would be on my side and actually deport this individual. And then I realized when I went to INS at 26 Federal Plaza that they weren't going to do anything. The agent I actually spoke to said that they would not do anything about it. That do I think that New York City would have as many people illegally here as it does if they went after every single one of them? And that started me thinking and researching on this issue because, of course, New York City wouldn't have as many illegals as it does if they actually enforced the law. And they don't even care when a particularly illegal alien is violent or stalking or threatening or intimidating an American citizen. They're not on the American citizen side. The federal government is not on the American citizen side. It is not advocating for the American individual. And so I realized that INS wasn't going to help me, that they weren't going to protect me against somebody who was illegally in our country, in my city, who intended to do me harm. And that's when the wheels started turning. And I started really researching this issue and found out about so many people who are violently victimized by people illegally in our country. And not only that, they shouldn't be here in the first place. They're all trespassers. And they're all here to get the most they can. And they will sort of frame this issue in terms of their families, and they never care about American families. They never care about all the harm incurred by their illegal alien presence to American families. They're never talking about American families. They're never talking about the crimes committed by illegal aliens to American families. And you have to realize when you have people coming here illegally who are from Latin America, and in particular from Mexico. In Mexico, they have something called, it translates into the rapture, and it is perfectly okay for a grown adult man to swoop down and kidnap a little girl, rape her, and return her, and the courts will okay it if that rapist says he intends to marry her someday, or that this was somehow a romantic interlude. And also, in many of these Mexican towns, these little towns and villages where a lot of the illegal Mexican men are from, the age of consent is 12 years old. So you have illegal Mexican men coming to the U.S., coming to New York, and they will prey, they will be sexual predators upon little girls. And depending on what this little girl knows and what she's been taught, she may fall victim, and it happens more frequently than it's reported. And all of this could be prevented if our government simply enforced our own immigration laws and effectively secured that border. And Obama has it within his power, and he always has had it within his power, to effectively secure the border. And instead he's playing let's make a deal with illegal aliens without first and foremost effectively securing that border so that we don't fall prey to all of the subsequent sob stories that are currently coming across the border. So you know he's lying when he says that he's trying to operate in the best interest of the American people. Because if he was operating in the best interest of the American people, he would take the first primary step to effectively secure the border so we're not constantly infiltrated into, even as I speak, even as this documentary ends.
And what do you think, now that deferred action is already on the books, what do you think should happen to it? What do you want for it to happen?
I want deferred action to go away. Deferred action is an amnesty, and it's the first step. It's sort of a gateway amnesty, and it will lead to other amnesties. Amnesties always leads to more amnesties. And what illegal aliens want is a laundry list of amnesties. So once they get deferred action, there's another amnesty that they want. It's never enough. It's very interesting that far from being what they like to call themselves undocumented and unafraid, they're actually illegally here and demanding a laundry list of amnesties, and deferred action is just the gateway amnesty into that.
And you mentioned there is sort of a risk with undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants coming into this country because, in a lot of Latin American countries, it's sort of what they're thinking. But for the young undocumented immigrants who do cross the border with their families, what do you think the harm is in those people getting an amnesty, those people who come here when they're 4 and have grown up in America?
Illegal aliens have oftentimes multiple families in multiple countries, including their home countries. And they have separated themselves from their families in their home countries. In particular, the illegal alien fathers often act almost like Johnny Appleseeds of sorts and have other families in their home country. So I'm all for reuniting illegals with their family from their home country. This is not the home for people illegally here, and it will never be. This is not the illegal alien home. This is my home. This is the American home. And the American dream is not for people who are not Americans, and illegal aliens are not Americans.
And what do you think about anchor babies?
Well, anchor babies, the phenomenon of anchor babies abuse the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was originally intended for the descendants of slaves, so we're talking about black Americans. That's who the 14th Amendment is intended for, and that's what should be applied to. And that's why New York Guys is part of a movement to have the 14th Amendment applied as originally intended. And anchor babies and the illegal alien parents that have these anchor babies are misusing and abusing the 14th Amendment. And it's all about gaining access to the U.S.'s resources. Don't be fooled by all the talk that they like to say about separating their families and so on and so forth, because most of them have families in their home countries that they separated themselves from. So don't be fooled by that argument. They want the U.S.'s resources, and that's what it's about. Why do they have to be reunited here? Think about that. Why is the U.S. the only country where the illegals can be reunited? It's because they want the access to the U.S.'s resources. They could be reunited in their home countries, and I'm all for that.
And do you think, you always have previously talked about how illegal aliens are sort of a net cost on our system. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Nearly every segment of American society is detrimentally affected by illegal aliens. And we're talking about the healthcare system is detrimentally affected, the job situation. The healthcare system, I have personal experience in working in the healthcare industry, and I have personally witnessed many illegals going to the ER like their personal doctor, going there for much less than severe illnesses, going there for things like colds. And there's tremendous cost incurred every time illegal aliens use the ER like their own personal physician and never pay. I mean, we're talking about thousands of dollars that accumulates into millions, which accumulates into the very real world problem of hospitals closing, hospitals like St. Vincent's in the West Village here in New York City. That no longer exists, largely because illegal aliens abused the ER and never paid. And St. Vincent's can't sustain that. And the U.S. can't sustain this. It can't sustain it for much longer.
And I've seen some videos of you, where you've been yelled at, criticized, spit on, and all of these things. These people don't actually know you or about your movement. If you could tell them one thing or anything, what would you tell them?
I'm opposed to people illegally trespassing into the U.S., and this will never be the home for people illegally here. And mostly, yes, I am spat on and yelled at, and many intimidation tactics are employed against me. But I keep on coming, and a lot of the people that did this years ago, when New York ICE was originally founded about 7 years ago, are no longer there, and I'm still here. I'm still here, and I will withstand the, wrongful accusations and the misplaced name calling and all of that, because I firmly believe that the U.S. is entitled to our sovereignty, and that's what this is about. It's about our sovereignty. And in the countries that most of these illegals are from, they would never allow this to happen in their home countries. In Mexico, for example, they do a much better job of enforcing their own immigration laws than the U.S. does. And they're often very brutal about it. They won't, they will often brutalize somebody illegally in the country of Mexico, and that usually is from Central America, and then send them back to their home after they've beaten them up. That's how the Mexican government employs its own immigration laws. And it's entitled to do that. But the U.S. is entitled to its sovereignty, and I find it really hypocritical that you have people coming here like illegally from Mexico demanding what they call human rights or civil rights they would never bestow on their own illegals in their own country.
And you've been criticized so much. Why do you keep coming back?
Well, I firmly believe that I keep coming back even though I've been criticized, because I firmly believe in American sovereignty, and I believe in what I stand for, and that's that people should not be trespassing into our land. And very little of our laws matter if we do not have our sovereignty, if we aren't controlling who gets to come into our country or who gets to remain in our country. That is first and foremost, and if we don't have that, then very little of our subsequent laws matter.
Do you think that New York ICE would survive if you weren't there?
I think I'm very integral to New York ICE.
And does your family support New York ICE?
My family does support New York ICE. My family does support me. Sometimes they're a little bit afraid, but they definitely believe in what I believe in.
Do you think you're going to keep New York ICE going for as long as you can?
I absolutely will keep New York ICE going for as long as I can.
And in terms of Obama and his legislation, what do you hope he does in this term? Or what would be the best sort of legislation that you could hope for?
My dream for Obama and what he can do with this, with his legislation, would be to effectively secure that border. Effectively. The U.S. has the manpower, the U.S. has the military to do it. And Obama should get that done and show that his allegiance is with the American people and not illegal alien infiltrators.
Do you have anything you want to add? Anything you would like to say?
I'd like to say that I'm grateful to have had this interview, and thank you for the opportunity to hear a side which often does not get enough play. And that I'm doing this as part of an NYU documentary, and oftentimes when I was doing the interviews in NYU, I found that NYU actually had more security than our actual borders do, that the U.S. does. And I'd like our country to have as much security as NYU.
And do you feel, just the last question, do you feel like you've been sort of taken advantage of by the press, ever?
Well, I feel that the press often tries to distort my side, but I've learned I don't even like giving interviews, I don't even like public speaking, so I'm doing a lot of things I actually don't like to do, because this is what I really, really believe in. But the press, I've found, oftentimes tries to distort what I'm saying, so I've learned how to speak in sound bites, so it's very hard to splice what I've said into something that is far from what I intended to say. But the press often doesn't give, the mainstream press often doesn't give our side a fair shake. And they seem to be compromised by whatever agendas they think they should be following.
And is that all you want, a fair shake?
I want our country's sovereignty. That's my ultimate goal. And I would like, when the press does interview our side, to actually have it air. Because many interviews I give don't make it to the final cut. Oftentimes they're completely edited away. So the other side is the only side that gets heard.
Okay, great. Put on your coat. You're probably freezing.
Was I shivering?
Oh,
I hope
no.
not.